Bravos for BP, ring, ring, the bells ring. Bravos, bravos, bravos. For Mafeking's king, I hear he'll be.
When Mafeking was finally relieved in May 1901, the nation erupted with joy. Baden-Powell was proclaimed a national hero.
To die for our duty, our fortune may be, and we'll never give in, said BP.
The British may have been the ultimate victors, but the Boer War had left the nation badly shaken. Mafeking was one redeeming highlight in an otherwise undistinguished colonial war. And one of the reasons the British Army performed so badly was that compared to the Boers, the healthy, outdoor farmers-turned-soldiers, the British troops had been weak and sickly. The Director General of the War Office had even issued a memo warning that between 40 and 60% of the men trying to enlist had been declared unfit for service.
The Edwardian establishment was terrified that after a century of rapid industrialisation, Western society might be, in their words, degenerating.
A deeply influential book at the time was Max Nordau's Degeneration, which saw in modern urban culture a kind of frantic pace that he believed would lead to the decline of the West.
The dead, carried off by heart and nerve diseases, are the victims of civilization, the consequences of states of fatigue and exhaustion, of the vertigo and whirl of our frenzied life.
The Victorian factories had made the nation wealthy, but they'd also manufactured an urban underclass. Undernourished and under-exercised, their offspring were now the Edwardians' problem. Some thinkers even suggested that degeneracy was hereditary and should be eradicated by enforced sterilisation. But Baden-Powell was no pessimist. He was not prepared to write off the nation's youth.
When somebody's a great national hero, they're a great national hero to boys. And quite spontaneously, little boys' groups, they might be choirs, they might be little local clubs or whatever it is, asked him to be their patron, and he sent them advice.
When ordinary people began to buy a book he'd written, called Aids to Scouting, he realised that though they were originally designed for soldiers, the same techniques could work for civilian boys.
Scouting is a character-building exercise. It teaches self-discipline, observation, inquisitiveness. These are all, to Baden-Powell, good qualities.
Baden-Powell agreed to use Aids to Scouting as the basis for a new work, which would promote the health and well-being of British youth.
The Edwardians were the first generation to go football crazy. But then, as now, not everybody approved. The idea of being a fan, of spectating rather than participating, did not appeal to Baden-Powell. He believed in a healthy mind in a healthy body. Mens sana in corpore sano. That was the real goal for a boy.
My heart sickens at thousands of boys and young men, pale and narrow-chested, hunched up, miserable specimens, smoking endless cigarettes, numbers of them betting, all of them learning to be hysterical as they groan or cheer in panic unison with their neighbours.
For Baden-Powell, physical and moral health went hand in hand. And when the men of Britain were strong, so was the country itself. No body part was neglected in the quest for national vitality.
To be healthy and strong, you must keep your blood healthy and clean inside you. This is done by breathing in lots of pure, fresh air and by clearing out all dirty matter from inside your stomach, which is done by having a RIA daily without fail. If there is any difficulty about it one day, drink plenty of good water and practice body twisting exercises. And all should be well.
What struck me editing the book was the number of times Baden-Powell talks about orifices. Mouths, anuses, eyes, ears, all the openings of the body. It seems to me that this reflects Baden-Powell's concern with national self-defense, with keeping the body of the nation disciplined and controlled, not allowing any inroads to disease and infection.
Unlike traditional educationalists, Baden-Powell also believed it was in the national interest for boys to show initiative. And he charged each scout with doing a good turn every day.
Need a hand with that box. There we go. Good morning. Would you like some help crossing the road?
Despite his best efforts, many of the issues of a century ago are still high on the social agenda today.
There we are.
I'm going to see David Lammy, MP for Tottenham in London, Minister for Culture, and more importantly, former Cub Scout, to discuss Baden-Powell's influence on New Labour.
At what age did they get you, the Scouts?
Oh God, 7?
7.
Yeah.
Right.
Young.
Yeah. And you, I mean, all joking apart, a pretty formative 4 years at that time.
Oh yeah. I remember a particular week in which the whole purpose was to knock on people's doors to say, can we wash your car in the Cubs uniform? You'd get money.
It was Bob a Job week.
Bob a Job week. You'd get money for doing that.
Yeah.
But it was also, this was bringing you into contact with the neighbourhood.
Yeah.
It was that or knock down ginger, we used to call it, when you knocked on his door and run away. But this time you actually knocked on the door, you got some money, and you
did something useful.
And you did something useful. That's a great thing.
The subtitle for Scouting for Boys is actually a handbook for instruction in good citizenship. Yeah. Now I'm afraid he says, indifferent citizenship is and always has been the progeny of indifferent government.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect what Baden-Powell would say is that citizenship is not just something that's kind of learned in a classroom. It is something about being a citizen and learning that with a group of other people and in a wider community.
At one point he's talking about socialism. And
I hope he's nice about socialism. Is he nice?
Well, he claims to be a socialist.
Oh, good.
At one point, which again I think would surprise a lot of people. He's less the sort of Tory hate figure that people imagined.
What Baden-Powell was keen on was community. I suspect he had a kind of Gordon Brown sense of prudence and hard work.
And of thrift. It's all in there.
And of thrift and of duty.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there for Labour folk, but actually there's a lot there also for the kind of one nation Tory.
But are the virtues Baden-Powell encouraged in Scouts really as highly valued today?
Baden-Powell writes about boys just sort of loafing around on street corners smoking, doing nothing. And he said he wanted to teach them something useful. Now, what can you do? Do you need first aid?
Yeah, on the number of camps everyone has to know a certain amount of first aid on camp.
Right, because in here he describes an incident where there was a woman and she was drowning in a pond in London, and there were 5 useless boys on the side who didn't save her because they couldn't swim and they couldn't do first aid. That wouldn't be you, would it?
I've been trained in first aid to a fairly moderate level, but we're given the skills so we know what to do in situations.
Right, if I had a heart attack now, could one of you save my life?
Probably.
I'm hoping. I really am.